up? I know I just said I'm sorry I ever doubted you, but it would just give me so much peace of mind if I saw your Skype messages. So then I was like, I am so fucked. You remember high school relationships? That was terrible. I mean, it was a great experience, zero regrets, had a lot of fun, learned a lot of lessons, but for sure show. But I mean, how could it not be? I mean, grown middle-aged adults struggle to maintain healthy relationships. How is a 16-year-old boy with raging hormones and no life experience supposed to navigate the delicate and complicated matters of the heart? But that's what happens when you put hundreds to thousands of horny teenagers in a box for 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that's what happened to me. At 16 years old, I truly fell in love for the first time. And I had the stereotypical passionate, fiery, and drama-filled relationship that is all too common in high school. And like most of those relationships, it ended in a fucking inferno of pain and sorrow. So let's talk about that. I was 16 years old and it was the summer break between my junior and senior year. It was actually the first day of the SAT exams and I was standing outside of the testing center as we awaited for the test to begin. That was the first time I saw her. Taylor, or at least that's what we'll call her. She was this half Chinese, half Cuban girl, absolutely beautiful with one of the biggest, brightest smiles I had ever seen. Instantly, I was in love with this girl. So I go over and introduce myself, and right away we hit it off. We talked for a little bit, exchanged numbers, and then before you know it, we were up all night texting and talking on the phone. All the signs of young love were in the air. Fast forward a couple months later, and your boy is in his first real, full-fledged relationship. And if I had to use one word to describe it, passionate. And we both leaned in pretty fucking hard. Like, we were meeting up between classes just to make out. I can't even tell you about the things we would do in just the most ridiculous places. In the back of movie theaters, hotel bathrooms, in the car line waiting to pick up her little brother from middle school. It was crazy. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses, my friends. Oh no. It was messy. I mean, the fighting, it was intense, and the rules we put on each other, absolutely ridiculous, and always grounded in immature jealousy. Like, we were the look at each other's text messages kind of couple. I mean, if I even saw another dude talking to Taylor for too long, I turned into a fucking caveman. Definitely not cool. And she didn't play games either, man. I remember this one time she had her girlfriend drop me home after school, and then she sent a string of text messages that went something like this. But we really did love each other. I believe that. And although it was a roller coaster and the lows were low, the highs were very high. But eventually, like all roller coasters must do, it came to an abrupt end. So one day, close to the end of senior year, Taylor was dropping me home after school when she turned to me and said, "Hey, let me see your phone." Now, by this time, this was a routine procedure, so I gladly handed her my phone because I thought I had nothing to hide. So she starts going through my phone, and first she goes to the text messages. So I'm like, "See, babe, you know I'm good to you." And then she's like, let me see your Facebook messages. So I showed her my Facebook messages. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Come on, babe, you know I'm not talking to any other girls." So then she's like, I know, I just want to make sure. Here, let me see your WhatsApp messages. So then I show her those, and then I'm like, okay, are you satisfied now? I mean, there are literally no more things to check. So finally she's like, okay, yes, there's nothing to see on your phone. I'm sorry I doubted you. So then I'm like, thank you. Damn, girl. I mean, come on. I love you, babe. I would never do anything to hurt you. So then she's like, I know, I love you too. You know, it's just sometimes I think too much about it. So then I'm like, it's okay, babe. I get it. Just don't worry about it, all right? Text me when you get home, okay? I'll see you tomorrow. And then right as I'm opening the door, she says, hey, you use Skype, right? So then I'm like, yeah, what's up? I know I just said I'm sorry I ever doubted you, but it would just give me so much peace of mind if I saw your Skype messages. So then I was like, I am so fucked. So a little backstory. Now, I don't keep in touch with most of the people I went to school with in Jamaica. I don't use Facebook because it's stupid now, and I also wasn't that close with a lot of my friends back there to begin with. But there was like a handful of people that I still kept in touch with, two of which are girls. Now, one of them may or may not have technically been an ex-girlfriend, and the other one may or may not have been the girl I took to prom for high school in Jamaica. But it's not as bad as it sounds. The first girl, she was my girlfriend in like the 7th grade, okay? We were like 12. We didn't even kiss, so it wasn't like that. And the second girl, we were just friends. I mean, I shot my shot, don't get me wrong, but also we were never intimate with each other. But we all stayed pretty close, so I would text these girls pretty often through Skype. But believe me when I say that the conversations were 100% innocent. These girls were just my friends. But I knew that if Taylor saw these enormous strings of text messages to these girls back in Jamaica, a place where I visit every year, she was gonna lose her shit, regardless of whether or not the texts were out of pocket. And to be fair, I probably would have reacted the exact same way. So now she's getting suspicious because she could sense my hesitation. So she's like, Don, show me your Skype. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, babe, come on. This is getting ridiculous. Why don't you trust me? So then she's like, I'm not trusting you because you're obviously hiding something. So show me your Skype. So now I'm sweating because I was pretty sure that if she saw these messages, she was never gonna speak to me again. So now I'm like, babe, please, let's just drop it. But baby girl wasn't having it, man. She was like, are you going to show me your messages or not? Well, no. She was like, excuse me? So then I was like, I said, I'm coming. So then she's like, Don, if you don't show me your Skype messages right now, I am breaking up with you. So there I was, cornered with nowhere left to turn. I unlocked my phone, pull up my Skype inbox, and I handed her the phone. So she takes the phone, looks at the messages, and I'm like, yeah, this relationship is over, because there was no way she was gonna let this slide. So in a final effort to save my relationship, I was like, babe, it's not what you think it is. These are my friends. I wasn't trying to hide anything from you, but I know how you'd feel about this. I promise I'm not up to anything. Just read a text, see for yourself. But she just sat there in silence, furious. Eventually she turns to me and then she... So now I'm scrolling through her contacts to see if I saw any names that looked familiar from school. Again, not really looking for anything incriminating. I was just honestly waiting for her to complete her investigation of my Skype account. So I'm scrolling and then I see it. I see his name, her ex-boyfriend. The first time I ever heard the term toxic relationship was about a year or so ago, and since then it's become a pretty mainstream term. And at first, I didn't like it. I mean, it's whatever now. I guess it's a good word to describe an abusive or a dysfunctional relationship, but I feel like it does a poor job at actually communicating what it feels like to be in a relationship that one would describe as toxic. And I could be wrong, maybe it's just me, but when I think of toxic things, I think of heavily polluted lakes or poisonous gases in the air, environments that would make you feel increasingly and consistently sicker and sicker if you were to be in them. That's not what a toxic relationship feels like. I mean, if you found your significant other to be constantly repulsive and consistently hurting you, you would have no problems leaving and forgetting all about them. No, these kinds of relationships are more akin to being addicted to hard drugs than to being thrown into a toxic lake. If things were always bad, you wouldn't stay. You stay because when things aren't bad, they feel really good. Dysfunctional relationships have a kind of fire to them that you don't really see in healthy relationships because of how often and how drastically things swing from being really good to really bad. And it's that contrast that makes things exciting. It's the hope for another really good day that makes you willing to stick through all the bullshit. no matter how bad it gets. But these relationships, by their very nature, are self-destructive, and eventually they implode. So when we left off at the end of the last video, which was part 1, this is part 2. Go ahead and watch part 1. I'll link to it on the screen. Check it out if you haven't seen it as yet. We were in the middle of the implosion of my toxic high school relationship. So let's pick up where we left off. Babe, it's not what you think it is. These are my friends. I wasn't trying to hide anything from you, but I know how you'd feel about this. I promise I'm not up to anything. Just read a text, see for yourself. But she just sat there in silence, furious. Eventually she turns to me and then she says, Don, I don't even know what to say to you. Babe, just get out. Just get out, just go. So that's what I did. I got out the car and went inside. But like I said in the last video, this wasn't what broke us up. After she got home, we got on the phone, talked it out, and by the end, we were both numb and emotionally drained, but still together, and we moved on from it. Kinda. But this was not out of the ordinary in our relationship. We both imposed rules on each other that came from places of insecurity and dysfunction. We were both type A personalities, very controlling, and we were young, immature, and inexperienced. And I'll be real with you, I was much worse than her. Too rich for who, y'all just got rich again. Who grips the mic and likes to kill their friends. I've never been the type to make amends. If she was at an 8, we like to. Yeah. If she was at an 8, I like to make it 10. And I'm not sure where it came from, man. Maybe it's just in my genes, maybe it's because of my childhood, maybe I just needed to grow up. But it has been a journey to get to where I am today, and even still, I feel like I have very far left to go. But somehow we made it to the end of senior year, and at the end of the year, things felt good. I remember the last time I saw her, I was sure that this was going to be the girl that I would marry one day. It was actually in the airport. This was the last time that I would see her for years, but let me back up for a second. I feel like I'm a little all over the place, so let me try and make sure that we're all on the same page. In the summer of 2011, I moved from Jamaica to America at the age of 15. I was made a junior in high school. I would turn 16 that December. In the summer of 2012, I met Taylor, who would then be my girlfriend until the summer of 2013 when we broke up. During that year that we were together, I lost my virginity to her. We met each other's family. We went to prom. We went to each other's basketball games. We broke up. We got back together. Oh, and that scene in the car where she read my Skype messages, that happened close to the end, maybe a couple months before we broke up. So now we're back in the airport, a couple weeks before our final breakup. I was flying back to Jamaica where I would spend the summer before I moved to California, which is where I would be living for the next 4 years in college. I was going to California to pursue my dreams of becoming a professional basketball player. Taylor and I had agreed to maintain a long-distance relationship, and we were naively optimistic about the future. So there we are in the airport where we would say our last goodbyes before I moved away. And I remember telling her that I wanted her to enjoy her college experience and that I trusted her. I knew I was lying to myself, but I also knew that the way how I had been handling the relationship in regards to allowing my insecurities to cause problems was definitely not gonna work for a long-distance relationship. I knew I had to be a better boyfriend if I wanted it to work. And I did want it to work. I mean, I was madly in love with this girl. I knew that I had to start trusting her. So I made it a point to start trying really hard, and I gave her my word that going forward, I was not gonna be a jealous or controlling partner at all. And she said she was gonna do the same for me. So we kissed goodbye, I got on the plane, and that would be the last time that I would see her in person for almost 4 years. So fast forward a couple weeks and I'm chilling at my crib in Jamaica with my family. I can't remember anything eventful happening those first 2 weeks, mostly just watching Netflix and playing video games, but Taylor and I spoke every day. One day Taylor and I were texting each other, and then I told her that I was gonna hang out with some of my old friends. I think telling her that rekindled some dormant feelings that never quite went away after the Skype fight. So from out of what felt like nowhere, she asked me for my Skype password. Now, on one hand, I was very surprised because that was some next level shit. To ask me for my password to my Skype account, which at 17 was of course the same password that I used for everything. This was some serious invasion of privacy, and I didn't feel like I deserved it. But I love this girl, and I really did stop talking to my girlfriends from Jamaica after the Skype fight. It was one of the things I promised her the day of the fight. So I gave her my password because I knew for sure that there was nothing to see. So there I am, sitting at my computer, waiting to hear back from Taylor after she investigates my Skype. And it starts to take a while, like 7 minutes or so had passed, and I'm like, what the f is taking her so long? Now, although I was willing to give her my password, make no mistake, I thought that this was ridiculous, like beyond reasonable paranoia. So almost as a joke, I tell her to give me her Skype password. Now, here's why I said it was like a joke, because it was to my understanding that Taylor never used her Skype account. She told me way back at the start of the relationship that she had like a handful of contacts from middle school, but she never uses it nowadays. I know this because we never Skyped during our relationship, which we would have if she used the app, but she didn't. Or at least that's what she told me. Me asking her for her password, if anything, was just an attempt to show her indirectly how crazy this was. But it didn't faze her at all because she sent me her password with no hesitation. So there I am, just waiting, and then eventually I was like, all right, I'll log into her account and see what it looks like. Again, not expecting to see anything remotely interesting. I signed into her account, and lo and behold, it was not at all what I expected. There were well over 100 contacts listed in her Skype, which was the first thing that gave me pause. Why? Because I was expecting a handful of people. I mean, I myself had like under 40 contacts, and I used the app regularly. But okay, she had a lot of contacts. It doesn't really mean anything. Maybe I misinterpreted what she meant by a handful of people. So now I'm scrolling through her contacts to see if I saw any names that looked familiar from school. Again, not really looking for anything incriminating. I was just honestly waiting for her to complete her investigation of my Skype account. So I'm scrolling, and then I see it. I see his name. Her ex-boyfriend. That was the second thing that threw me off, because according to Taylor, they never spoke, and she supposedly cut him out of her life after they broke up. Or at least that's what she told me. So now I had to know, had Taylor been communicating with her ex? Hey man, I told y'all from the jump, this entire story is just a complete show of dysfunctional behavior on both sides. So I click on his name, and there it was, as clear as day. Within the last 2 weeks, they had Skyped twice, and my 17-year-old insecure self just didn't know how to process that. My girlfriend was Skyping her ex. Boy, did that shit bother me. And that's all the information I had. It didn't tell me how long the conversations were. It didn't tell me who called who. There were no text messages going back and forth. Just 2 timestamps for the 2 video calls. So now I'm starting to get anxious. Like, I ain't know what to do with myself. So I log out of her account, and now I'm just sitting there waiting for her to text me back. Finally she does, and of course she tells me that she's sorry for not trusting me and that this wasn't gonna happen again. So then I text her back, and then I'm like, yeah, you're right, this will never happen again, because we are done. Instantly she replies, and she's like, what do you mean? And then I tell her that while I was on her Skype account, I saw that she had been talking to her ex, and that I was able to get into the history and pull everything up. All the messages, all the timestamps for the video calls, I could see everything. So obviously I was lying. Like I said earlier, I only saw that someone called somebody twice within the last 2 weeks. That's all the information I had to work with. So I lied. Why? Because I was fishing. I knew I didn't have much to work with, but I knew I had to find out if she was talking to this behind my back, because there was no way I could do a long-distance relationship without knowing for sure. So I figured my best bet was to pretend like I saw and knew everything, and then get her to snitch on herself. And it worked. She started sending me paragraphs of text filled with explanations, apologies, and excuses, and I'm just like, holy fucking this is real. She had been talking to her ex. It wasn't until that moment that I knew for sure. So it wasn't until that moment that I really lost my shit. I then proceeded to lean into this girl, man. Oh my God, man. I went off, my G. I said the meanest, most hurtful shit that I could think of. If I had just called her a thought and left it at that, which, still terrible, that would have been me handling the situation 10 times better than I actually did. So there I am, angry, hurt, confused, but mostly angry, and there in my state of undeserved self-righteousness after sending several hurtful messages in an attempt to cut this poor girl down, a girl that I truly loved, I told her that I was done with the relationship and that I hope we never speak again. Guys, this is a video where from start to finish, I'm giving you example after example of what not to do. I handled almost everything poorly in this relationship. Absolutely terrible. Most of the things that I do right nowadays when it comes to a relationship or talking to a girl, I learned from this one relationship. I have been in several relationships, and this one relationship probably taught me 70% of what not to do and what to do when in a relationship with a girl. That is how badly I f***ed it up. It's kind of sad. I destroyed that relationship. I mean, sure, both of us played a role in the ultimate demise of the relationship, but I personally believe that I had a lot more to do with it than she did. So now she's hurt and upset because of all the f***ed up shit I said to her. So then she was like, okay, Don, if this is what you want, and if this is who you are, then I don't want a relationship either. So then I was like, fine, good, see ya. Wouldn't wanna be ya. And that was it. That was the last day that we were ever a couple. I did so many things wrong in that relationship. I made so many mistakes that unfortunately I would make again in future relationships. I mean, I don't think I was that out of pocket being upset about the fact that Taylor seemed to be getting close to her ex again. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for a partner to be close to an ex. But I also don't think that most girls, I mean, I only date girls, so that's what I'm gonna speak to. I don't think that most girls want to be close with their ex. In all honesty, I think I pushed her there with the fighting, the jealousy, the controllingness, all of that just pushed her farther and farther away. And of course, I'm a much better partner, a much better person today because of these mistakes that I made when I was 17 with Taylor. I'm a lot more mindful of controlling and jealous behavior and feelings. And I'm also a lot more confident and secure in myself today than I was back then. So this kind of doesn't happen anymore. There are so many lessons that you could take away from this story. But the point that I want to focus on today is dealing with fear. Because at the root of all of these problems was fear. And the funny thing about fear is that it's usually irrational, ungrounded in facts or logic. I was so afraid of somebody else coming along and gaining Taylor's love and affection, taking that away from me based on absolutely no evidence. She had never done anything to indicate that she would ever allow something like that to happen. But I still allowed myself to become afraid of this imaginary fictional threat that I made up. And it made me behave in a way that caused the exact thing that I was afraid of to come true. Do you get how that is? But if you know anything about the law of attraction, then that makes perfect sense that that would happen. You know, you focus on something negative so much, even though there's no reason to believe that negative thing would happen, it happens just because you're constantly thinking of it. So I guess what I want to ask of you is to ask yourself, what decisions are you making out of fear? And it's not limited to just relationships. Maybe you want a new job, you're tired of the job you're working at, but you're afraid of that in-between period where you don't know what's going on, where you don't have a job, where you don't know where you're getting money from. Maybe you want to change majors, but you're afraid of what your friends or your parents might say because, you know, you seem to be losing focus or switching up. Maybe you want to do something that to other people seems so not you that you're afraid to do it. You know, maybe you want to be a rapper, but you've always been the quiet guy. Maybe you want to be a musician or a painter or a videographer, or, you know, you want to do something that people are going to say, oh, that's not you. So you're afraid of what they're going to say. You're afraid of the rejection, so you don't do it. Whatever it is, any decision that is made out of fear, I can almost guarantee you is the wrong decision.
Look at she